do.
So by inducing that energy, whether through oscillating or whether through the ringer device, it doesn't really matter. It's that energy increase in the cell, and that's what we see in the dark field microscope, that they all start to inflate and to energize, move a lot quicker.
And the problem is matching the type of PEMF that you're using for the problem. And every PEMF is going to provide some benefit to the body.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily going to provide the benefit you want.
Yeah.
In the time frames that you want. So you could produce a lot more charge a lot more quickly with a ringer temporarily, but it doesn't have the frequencies. So the body then has to produce the frequencies and the reactions, and the body sort of takes care of business on its own after that. On the other hand, you can use very low intensity frequency systems, whether it's a single frequency or complex frequencies, and it doesn't produce as much energy, but it plays out over a longer period of time. So you can do more sustained work with PEMFs that are lower intensity and multiple frequencies over periods of time. So we have devices, for example, that do the ringer type of approach. One of them is the PEMF120 or the Regenitron, which is a new one that's being introduced. On the other hand, you use other ones that you can carry, put in your pocket, like the Flex Pulse. So that produces a frequency that's lower intensity, but it has multiple frequencies, and so you can actually then carry it around with you, and it takes longer to produce the results that you want.
Yeah, which is why you can see mostly in clinics, when they want therapeutic effects, they use those ringer devices to get an instant result, to pull through more patients before treatment, after treatment, to get the effects.
Right.
Whereas as a ongoing treatment, as a well-being treatment, pain treatment, regeneration and rejuvenation program, the oscillating programs are more
sustaining and maintaining. Exactly. Now they're therapeutic too, but they do more maintenance and sustainment. So the best approach would be to have multiple devices if you could afford it.
Exactly, always.
Right? But if you can only afford one, then as you said, you can start with getting things really moving with a higher intensity ringer type devices and maintain the progress then with the other lower intensity systems.
Which is actually one of the points of the blue device here, which allows the ringer in one side as a pulse, and then having the sweep frequencies on top of that, which then allows to have that oscillating frequency at the same time.
Correct. Yeah. So this blue type device has built into it the capacity to have a ringer spike, if you will, and then there's a rest between spikes. So you have to decide how much of a rest time you have. Well, that's in a sense wasted time. It's not wasted because it's never completely wasted, but it's sort of idle time. It's still motor's still running, but it's idling. And so what you can do is you can take that idle time and make it work, but you're giving the body different information in that idle time, which the body will use in other ways.
As you just explain it, it jumps to my mind. It's like music. You have the drummer who gives the beat, and then in between is the piano that plays very nicely.
Right, or the violin, or exactly.
Very nice. Now, would we just switch over in regards to cancer? You know, my audience is all about cancer, and that's our main subject, degenerative diseases. How you see the influence in those devices with that disease?
Well, as we know, cancer is a systemic condition, okay, and it's a chronic condition. It's not just you get rid of your tumor, you got rid of your cancer, right?
Unfortunately not.
Unfortunately, and I wish it were so. So you can never treat cancer in isolation. It has to be treated in the context of a complete environment. And if I got a big toe that's hurting me because I got gout or something, or I banged my toe or broke it or something, well, all of that's going to affect the rest of the body. And if I have cancer growing in the body, then the cancer is going to be affected by my big toe.
Oh, certainly.
So you have to take care of the whole body. And so the magnetic fields are basically doing both. They're helping with the individual cancer, but they're basically helping with the whole body. So you can start like with the ringer concept idea. You start with the ringer, but then you add the other aspects, the harmonics. So you can do both. Now, so magnetic therapy can impact the cancer directly, the solid tumor directly.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what you want to do in the long run, that's the short run. In the long run, what you want to do is to have a better, healthier body in general. Let me give you another example, another concept. If you have 70 trillion cells in your body and your left little toe decides to get a hangnail,
Yeah.
how many cells have to be damaged before you're even aware that you have a hangnail growing?
There are millions.
Millions,
Yeah.
right? Millions, beyond your awareness. You're not aware of it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing magnetic therapy on a regular basis for maintenance purposes, then you're taking care of business before you even get the hangnail.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
Right? So what other conditions are going on in our body that need attention that you're not even aware of? And yet they're a drain on you. And if you have more than 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, that all of that starts to become cumulative and adds to the total burden.
I found that always fascinating. One lady, during the workshop, we had the dark field microscope set up, and we pricked her finger, and then she had PMF treatment in her tummy, and then we took the blood from the finger again. She said, why did that change if you had the treatment down here? And it's like, it's always a systemic treatment.
It's completely
especially
systemic.
with PMF, because it penetrates. Like if you look, you don't have the mats here, are they here? So if you have the penetration, it goes, 2, 3, 4 meters, you can measure the value or even more very clearly. So it really penetrates the whole body.
It goes right on through. The body is transparent to magnetic fields. This is different than electrical stimulation. Electrical stimulation, like with TENS, T-E-N-S pads, doesn't penetrate very deep because the fluid, the saline in the body and the resistance of the cells dissipates that energy. In addition to that, it tends to go where it wants to go. You can't focus it and direct it.
It's very difficult, yeah. They use that with galvanotherapy,
Exactly.
but it's very targeted, small area.
Tar and superficial, typically, right? Or if you want to go deeper, you have to increase the, well, you may have to do surgery, but you have to increase the electrical field. And when you do that, you start killing cells. All right, so
They do
there's
that in Hanover. They have internal surgical procedures for the tumor, for prostate cancer, and actually place needles into the tumor in positive and negative,
Right.
and through that kill it with current.
and you can do that, but that's invasive.
Yeah,
so
certainly, very invasive.
Can you do that without being invasive? And the answer is with PEMFs, you can.
Yeah.
Because the PEMFs that we use are not what we call radio frequency, or they're not microwave level fields. Microwave fields are very, very short wavelengths. They don't go through the body. And so as a result, they will tend to be absorbed by the body. That creates heat, which creates damage. This is why we want to avoid these kinds of PEMFs or EMFs as much as we can. So I make a distinction between the sort of bad EMFs and the therapeutic EMFs, because most of the bad EMFs are actually not long wavelengths.
Yeah.
So we call them low frequency EMFs. They're not usually harmful to the body. It's rare that they are. But the other ones with very short wavelengths can be harmful. They can cause cancers. They can be used therapeutically too. We actually use them therapeutically.
Well, it's something that I always think, when you look at the spectrum, you start at a low frequency and they're usually tolerated by the body over a long period. And the higher we go, the shorter the period time. It's like far infrared. You don't want to use far infrared for hours because it becomes detrimental. Whereas if you use it for 1 or 2 hours to heat up and to use the fever, it's very beneficial. Laser light, you don't want to burn yourself non-stop with laser light, but if you use it short time, so the higher we go up, the shorter the exposure time to actually have a beneficial effect.
That's correct. And with low intensity, low frequency PEMFs, you can have extended exposures 24/7. Because there's some, if water's flooding the road and you put a barrier up, you have to maintain the barrier until the water level goes down.
Yeah.
If you don't maintain the barrier, the water will reflood the road. Well, PEMFs do the same thing. So sometimes you'll see a benefit today, in a few minutes even, with PEMFs. But if you take the PEMF away, the pain comes back because you have not resolved the cause. Right? So the intention is not only to make you symptomatically better, reduce your pain level, but you also want to begin to affect the cause, get rid of the reason.
And I think that's where all of the PMF devices are very powerful, because they increase oxygen uptake, they increase nutrient uptake, and they help with detoxification and restoring the balance within the
Balance,
body.
key.
Yeah.
Key. It's all part of balance. And the nice thing about PEMFs is they don't generally affect the low frequency, low intensity PEMFs. They don't generally affect healthy cells. It's like you and I having a conversation. If we're having a conversation, you can start tune out and go somewhere else in your mind, right, while I'm talking. So you can decide whether you want to pay attention or not. But a sick cell, if you got extreme sensitivity, then even a whisper would be something that's going to affect you. So sick cells are cells that are affected strongly by whispers, and they need the energy. So magnetic fields, going back to charge, they need the energy to finish the healing job. And we see this in devices that have been approved by the US government, the FDA, for healing fractures that don't finish the job of healing. They're called non-unions. And when you supply magnetic fields to those fractures, even though the fracture's been there that way for 5 years, all of a sudden you kickstart the healing process and the body finishes the job.
Yeah, exactly.